Hey everybody, Derek Brown here again, BEATBoX SAX with another Tuesday tutorial. This is now part 3 of my little series on a melodic counterpoint, having a couple of lines moving around with just one melodic instrument by alternating the notes. So the last 2 tutorials, I kind of gave you some exercises to work on, kind of building with complexity, starting with the static motion with one of the lines and alternating that with a moving line. Then the second tutorial, I got into both lines moving, whether that was parallel motion, similar motion. I didn't really talk about contrasting motion. That's kind of a given. That would be where one line's moving up while the other's moving down. If I did that with C scales, start on a low C, go up, start on my high C and go down. Infinite possibilities of things you could work on. So today I wanted to talk about basically things you can actually do with these techniques, like putting them into a song. So one of the things is going to be kind of putting a percussive element, and then also thinking about chords and how you can do that. So first of all, as far as adding the percussive element, because that's a big thing with my beatbox style that I do, is the most basic thing of adding that backbeat pop on 2 and 4. So check out my episode on the saxophone pops, or even on the slap crack. That's something I use a lot as well. So either the pop or the slap crack, which is using a slap tongue technique. So check those 2 episodes out, and then come back here for this. So the most basic way of doing this would be doing a downbeat with a bass tone, and then on your upbeat, doing something from your second line up top, so at least an octave up, and then on your next downbeat, doing one of these pops. So that's going to be beat 2 of our basic beat, doing a pop on that, and then on the upbeat, do another upper note, and so forth. So bass, upper, pop, upper, bass, upper, pop, upper, and move that around. And you can try some of those same things that we did. If I did the static harmony just on a C, it'd sound like this. So if I did the static harmony starting on a C, it'd sound like this. If I want to move the upper line, it'd sound like this. Or if I want to move both lines together, maybe I'll do the interval of a tenth, which is an octave and a third together. Work on that with various speeds. The next thing is now move your bass line around a little bit. Then a step beyond that, add some 16th notes. So a next step that you can do now is thinking about chords and harmony rather than just lines. So this is going to be where I'm thinking more of a bass note line, so like the root of a chord, and then filling in the harmony of that chord above. So I'm not necessarily thinking melody right here. I'm thinking arpeggiating the harmony with the bass. Now we've all worked on arpeggios of some sort. But this is going to focus more on having a bass note and then some kind of like ostinato figure that repeats of the chord, and there's going to be more of a gap in between. So it does kind of sound like it's a separate thing. An arpeggio to me still sounds like someone playing up a line, one line up. Whereas this, if we have that large leap of a gap between the chords, it's kind of like a piano playing a bass and then the chords in the right hand. So for instance, I might practice this by going around different bass notes in a certain key, like we'll just stick with the key of C major right now. Going down different bass notes, and arpeggiating maybe the same chord tones above, and once again with a big gap. So I'm going to play, for instance, a C, an ascending bass line, C, D, E, F, and I'm just going to play the third and fifth an octave above that bass. So I'm not going to go, but I'm going to displace those chord tones by an octave. So and that kind of separates them, makes them seem a little bit more independent. Another thing you can do is you could pick maybe just a couple chords and go back and forth between them, or just a really simple bass line. Doing it like in steps like I just did is an easy way. So if I do something in E minor and I do an E chord, E minor, a D major chord, and a C major chord, that descending line, that's a pretty easy one to work on. So I'm going to do the same thing. Root, fifth, third, fifth. And now, getting back to filling it out a little bit, I'm going to add a backbeat on beat 2. So that's one thing. Of course, you could do the possibilities for how you voice those arpeggiations is almost unlimited. That's doing root, fifth octave, or you could go. I'm just making these up. Root, 1, 2, 3, root, 1, 2, 3. Different things to kind of establish bass and harmony. The next step, after moving those bass notes around, because let me go there first. I could move the bass around to something, maybe a common pop progression of 6, the 6 chord, the 5 chord, the 1 chord, the 4 chord. So I'm going to go E minor, D major, G major, the 1, to C, the 4th. So moving those chords around and still practicing the arpeggiations with them, really good for your brain and just to get this kind of thing figured out. And of course, different keys as well. We're only hitting really 1 or 2 keys today. So the next step is kind of basically when I'm coming up with a tune or kind of improvising over this. No one likes to listen to an improvised solo where it's all disconnected. Like, you don't listen to Charlie Parker and the jazz greats didn't do things like this. They didn't have these large leaps, jarring leaps. They tried to connect things smoothly. So yeah, the bass line's going to have leaps because we're used to harmonies, you know, going down by fifths or fourths, as well as steps. But our melodic notes, we want to see how much we can connect those, and that's where the 2-line counterpoint comes in. Our bass notes are going to be jumping around, but we want to see our melody or our improvisation or whatever we're doing, even chord tones, see how similar we can get those. So going kind of, instead of jumping down, if your chord jumps down a fifth, instead of jumping down a fifth with your melody, go to the next closest chord tone. So I'm going to just do a little bit of that with that same progression, that 6, 5, 1, 4, E minor, D, 7, G major, C major. But I'm going to skip to closer chord tones. So there I was kind of doing more what could have been like a background part or a middle voice in a harmony part. The fun really happens when you can get that bass line, middle voice, and then a melody even higher on top, or just mix it in somehow. But just really experiment with that. Just think of it as you are your own rhythm section, your own accompaniment. and you have to solo on top of that. It's kind of a exciting idea. It's a little overwhelming at first, especially for us sax players, to think about we have to actually play a bass line and a melody instead of just melody. But usually, hopefully, we're already thinking about the chords anyways. We want to be thinking about or hearing that harmony in our heads anyways if we're doing a good solo. And don't feel like you have to play the straight up bass line as it is anyways. That gets kind of old. Only playing the bass line on downbeats. It has kind of a cool reggae feel, but if you want to branch out from that, feel like you can change that up with anticipations or delays or just your own rhythms. And lastly comes throwing in a bunch of these other percussive techniques that I've talked about, like the hi-hat or the air puffs into some kind of a groove where you can also solo on top or play a melody on top while you have that bass line or that kind of repeating groove underneath. So it might be something like this. And that's getting into just kind of what I do with a lot of my songs. So that wraps up kind of this 3-part series on kind of focusing on the melodies, the various melodic lines that I'm doing between the bass and the melody or with my improvisation. So hopefully you got something out of that. Once again, even if you don't choose to go down the route of ever doing this kind of beatbox sax, solo sax thing, I think you can still find cool ways to put this into your improv or just writing in general. Like I mentioned in the first episode, everyone from Bach to modern jazz musicians are using this a lot in different styles and genres and types of playing. So yeah, I hope you've enjoyed this, and be sure to check out my website for more info on what I'm up to, and don't forget to subscribe, and I'll still see you next week. Take care.